Greetings! In this video, we're going to discuss one of the important and useful components that's available within Microsoft Word. That is the Microsoft Word table. Now, before we get started, I want to say that this video will be using, for examples and teaching, we'll be using Microsoft Word 365, the cloud-based online learning version of the application. The instruction here that you see will also apply to desktop versions of Microsoft Word 2021, 2019, 2016, etc. These are the versions of Word that are actually installed on your computer. There will be some differences that we will see, and I'll point those out between the online cloud version, which is Word 365, and the desktop version. But generally, all the content will apply to either application. Let's look at our learning objectives. After studying this module, we'll be able to create a table, select items in a table. We'll be able to format tables. We'll be able to apply styles and other types of formatting to tables and cells. We'll be able to adjust cell alignment and sizing. We'll be able to merge and split cells. And finally, we'll be able to sort data in a cell. Okay, so what is a table? Well, it's a container, essentially. Let's take a look at just a standard Word document. Here's an essay style document. This is text. We see that there are paragraphs, and we can see that the paragraphs create a bit of separation between pieces, sections of text. There's also a larger title that's centered. We can see that things can get aligned. Of course, we can use our rulers. We know that Word documents rulers will adjust how text is laid out. But ultimately, this text that we see here on the screen is not really contained in any way. If we continue from left to right typing, we will reach eventually the right margin. And what happens next? Well, the text moves downwards. There may be times when we need to contain that text for other reasons, and we will look at that. So let's take a look at introducing tables. We know it's a container. We know it will create a system of columns and rows. We can insert a table several ways, and we'll look at those. As we know from using Microsoft Word, the ribbon really is a standard place to be able to get to everything. But as you also know, right-click in Microsoft Word does offer you a number of shortcuts and quick ways to get to things. So we'll see that. Also, we have seen before that when you implement certain items in Word, like shapes, images, when you are working with those, they're highlighted or you have clicked on them, we get new menu items that appear, and they are specific to those items. So know that in Microsoft Word with tables, it's the same thing. When we are using a table, we will get additional menu items that are applicable to the table itself. So here's an example, a visual example down here of a table. We have rows and columns. We have items that are separated from other items. Those are cells. So each cell, it's a small container inside this larger container. That's one way to think of a table, is that it's a larger container holding a number of smaller containers, and you decide how many of those smaller containers there are. Ultimately, that larger table container creates columns and rows. And so this is what we would call a 3x4 table, where we have 3 columns by 4 rows. Let's take a look at some data that would be more in the form of this essay, data that we may, or text, that we may want to move into the form of a table. So here is some text, okay? This is ultimately sort of an inventory for a store, perhaps. Basically, across the top, you'll notice that I've created 5 header items or 5 topics, and each one of these rows of text has 5 items in it. So across the top, we see item, type, color, cost, and quantity. And as we go down across these rows, we see stuffed animal, snuggle, gray, 6.89, and 9. Now, in the case of the stuffed animal row here, the stuffed animal is the item, snuggle is the type, the color is gray, the cost is $6.89, and the quantity is 9. This is just standard text. So if I were going to try to to present this, I could certainly present it just like this, and people could ultimately figure it out. Another way I could do it is I could use tabbing. So if I did want to separate this row out a bit, I could use my tab key and get things separated. I could do the same across the row, and then as I come down here, I could do the same here. So here I am just kind of getting things lined up. That doesn't work so well once I start to, let's say I needed to change the name of this stuffed animal to stuffed animal tiger. Notice we've just bumped everything over. There's nothing containing this text and holding it. In addition to that, if you just think visually, this is a little hard to look at, or at least it's hard to keep straight sometimes. I'll take the tiger back out just so we can get things lined up again. And in fact, I will even take this line and just move it down. If I just look at this line, that's not so bad. But as we get a lot of lines of text, it could get a little confusing. The way we would want to implement this is to bring in a table. Now, if I were to describe this table, I would call this a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. I'm going to go to my Insert tab here on the ribbon. Okay, and what you see when you insert a table is this grid. And essentially, it will describe for you as you go. You just move out, and it will help to show you exactly what the size of the table is going to be. So and remember, in our case, we're looking at a 5 by 6 table to contain this information that we have before us right here. So if I click that, I'm given a table. And so we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. 5 columns, 6 rows. So then we could simply come through here and move things into that table. Okay, so I've gone ahead and moved all that text into our table. I can tell you from the experience that I just had with a lot of copy and pasting, it's much easier to start with a table and build out your information gathering and placing with a table rather than having to copy and paste into the table. So now we see what the data or the text that we just had looks like in the table. Now I have not altered this table in any way. Resizing or doing anything with alignment or any adjustment to the cells. The first thing that you should notice right off the bat is that cells like stuffed animal here and outdoor adventure have dropped to 2 lines because of the length of this word, this pair of words. Stuffed animal is 2 words, so is outdoor adventure. So that's one feature you should know and always know about tables, is that they automatically resize based on what's placed into a cell. Now there's different ways to control that, and there's different ways to force it to do that when you get to a certain point. And there's different ways to make small, minute adjustments. And we're going to do one of those right now. Also notice that when I placed all this text, it all is left aligned. So of course, in Word, the standard alignment with anything you place in the document is left alignment. Let's try to get this so we see single rows between single lines instead of double lines like we see here with this first one and the second one. The way that you do cell adjustments right off the bat is by hovering somewhere in the table. Anytime you hover somewhere in the table, you will see different adjustment tools appear. Also note that in this upper left, we have an icon here that shows crosshairs or arrows going up and down and left and right. When we have more text in the document, you can move the table within the document to different lines in the document. You can move it down to the bottom of a paragraph, to the top of a paragraph, etc. But for this right now, what we'll do is we will use one of our cell resizing lines. Those will work up and down. That's what this would imply. They could also work left to right. That's what we're going to do right now. I want this stuffed animal pair of words to populate one line. So I'm going to click and hold and drag a bit to the right. And all I needed was just a little bit to get that to take up a single line. I'm going to do the same thing here on this second column. Just move it to the right a bit. And we then get that to pop out. Now notice, as I did that, Suddenly the colors are getting scrunched a little bit. This right side of the table is at the margin. So the right border, the furthest right edge of the table is going to stay at the margin in this case. I could bring it inwards and make a smaller table, but it will not go beyond. So I have to work with the width that I have in here. And there's different ways to get things to fit. But I see right off the bat that I know in the cost and quantity columns, I have extra room. So I'm just going to continue across here. Now I'm in the color, and it doesn't matter where I click with my vertical column resizing tool, it will choose the whole column. So now I can move over here, and now I've got colors kind of with enough room. I may move this type over just a bit, knowing that some of these types may become multiple words. Remember prior we wanted to add the word tiger here. So I'm going to come over here with this. I'm going to come over to quantity and move that over a bit, keeping my heading word intact. Move cost over a bit. Try to get some room for these first two columns where they might expand a bit more. Same thing with color. I could have color description that's 2 words. Now outdoor adventure is still on 2 lines. Let's bring this back a bit. And there. Now, when I look at this is very easy to see what's going on because the cells are separated by borders. So right off the bat, I have contained this information and I've made it easier to work with. Okay, let's go back here to our slideshow for a second. We just saw a little bit of this, navigating and selecting data in a table. There's a number of ways to move around in a table. Let's do that right now. If I wanted to move through these cells, right now I'm using my arrow key. Okay, I'm inside the text though. So I'm moving within the text. However, if I switch to my tab key, I'm now tabbing around the table left to right, and then as I hit the end of the last column, I drop down. If I choose shift, I go in reverse. So if you want to move around in a table, tabbing will move you left to right. You can also use the arrow keys within your cell, but you can also use the arrow keys up and down, and they will jump to the next cell down. So as long as I am over, that was a tab, now arrow down, tab, tab, arrow up. There's different ways I can move around. And when you have a fairly large table, you may be wanting to get to a certain place or dropping, inserting things in various places. You may not want to have to grab your mouse and move around, move from cell to cell. Okay, so the mouse pointer can also do different things depending. This icon, it's hidden behind here, but that is the icon that will show you the 4-headed arrow. That one is for moving the table. Right now it will not move because there's really nowhere to put it. If we were inside a larger document, we could move it around. The other icon that will appear is when you're outside the table. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to just highlight this whole column. I can choose the whole column just by hovering over. I'll get that dark small arrow pointing down, and I single click. And then I can make changes to what's in the entire column. Same thing on the left here. If I hover, I'll get the dark arrow. Let's make a change right now. In fact, I will hover on this first row and I will make that bold and I will bump it up a size. Now, notice what's happened. We do have to be careful because we have limited space here. So in this case where I know I have a little bit of space here, I can bump this back a bit and my quantity will eventually, once I move the sizing down, I'll be able to get enough room for quantity to fully appear. Okay? If that were a problem, I could always run this down to, let's say, 15. Choose a custom size. And that just made it a little smaller. The other thing that we can do here is on modifying a table. We can do some very specific things to the table itself using the contextual menu that appears. Let's come back and take a look at that. If I'm outside of the table, notice across here in my ribbon, I have Home, Insert, Layout, References, Review, View, and Help. That's in Microsoft Word 365. But if I click inside the table, immediately I get 2 new tabs up here. table design, and table layout. Now, table layout will let me do a lot of different things, including selecting. So if I were in this cell and I just wanted to select it, I could select the cell. If I were in that cell and I wanted to select the whole row, I could select the whole row. I could select the whole column, which now, that's because I went all the way across. If I were in single-clicked inside of that, I could choose the whole column. And then, of course, I could choose the whole table. The other way to choose the whole table is come up here to the arrow and single-click on it. That'll change the whole table. If I were looking to change my font color in the whole table, that's one way to quickly do it. Okay, I'm going to undo that. Okay, the other things you can do across here are merging and splitting cells, sizing rows and columns. Now this is specific to the Word desktop application. So you'll notice in Word 365, let's enter the table and come to table layout. We don't get a very specific sizing interface like this where we can choose the specific height and width. We can distribute columns and rows, meaning we could make them all the same size based on what we have already. We can select, delete, insert, merge and split, and align. Now let's look at alignment here. If I go across to this column row, this first row, which is our title row, our header row, and I select that. Notice here in the alignment tab, I have got all the normal choices. I currently align top left. But I kind of think that this might be better if we were to center align those words. Okay? These columns, these first two columns, those are probably better suited to a left align. And maybe color as well. However, cost and quantity, if I were to select this, let's start with this one actually. Select this and come to my table layout with align. Notice that this is price. Now price we would almost always align to the right. We want the last cent column to be all aligned on the right. So what we can do here is just come up here and align top right. Now it included cost. If I just drop my cursor there, come back to table layout and choose the cell, I can return that to a center line. Okay, quantity to me seems like it could certainly be center aligned. So I'm going to come again to my table layout, and this is just to be able to do this all in one fell swoop. It makes working move a lot faster. Now the quantity is all center aligned. We've done aligning data. We've talked about sizing and columns. Now let's look at inserting rows and columns. Okay, we have 5 columns and 6 rows. Let's do this. Let's place our cursor here so that Word knows where we want to begin the work, and we'll come to our layout and we will insert a row below. We could also insert columns left or right. I want to put a row in below here, and we have another row, basically the same thing. What I'd like to do here is copy this, bring this down. We have a new item that we had forgotten about. Again, when you're in Word, if you come into the cell as a single click, that will place you in the cell. If you double click, you'll capture all the text that's in the cell. So I'm going to copy, paste. I'm going to put a cost. That one was $6.89. This one will be $7.89. Now look what happened. My settings that I had for these columns and rows continue on. So this is a right align. These are left align. This will ultimately be center when I put in that we have 12 of those. And in this case, we will do the color as, we'll say it's a blue stuffed animal. Okay, we've just added a row. Let's go ahead and do the same thing up here. Let's highlight this row and let's make a table, go back to table layout here, and let's insert a row above. Okay, so now we have another whole row above. But in this case, I'm going to use this row as a title for this whole table. So one way to do that, notice this this row is broken up just the same way as all the rows below it. If I come to if I select the row, excuse me, notice on the table layout tab, I have the merge cells now lit up control. I'm going to click that. And since I've chosen all 5 of the columns here, it's going to merge all of them. And now I have one large row that's a single row. So we'll just call this inventory or toy inventory. Okay, again, that's centered and bold. I may take this entire row and run this up to say 18. Okay. Also, since we know we can do this, I'm going to grab the height adjustment for this row and bring this down just a bit. I'm going to do the same thing for the row below it, just to add a little bit of breathing room. Now I can see that this right here is not center. It's top aligned, top center. I want it middle. Same thing with this one. I want this middle. So when I add a little space top and bottom, it stays in the center. Well, now we're getting somewhere. The version of that for deleting is the same. If I wanted to delete this row, I highlight it, come back to my table layout tab, and I can delete rows. I can delete the whole table, column, row, cell. I can insert, I can select, and then you have the ability to split and align. Here, if I selected this row, now I see split cells. So I could split this back up if I wanted to. Formatting borders, shading, and styles. Formatting table borders, shading, and styles with the contextual tab. That one, once we click in the cell, we know that we see the tab that appears for it. Notice borders and shading have memory, just like the alignment does. So as we add new rows or columns, those borders and shading will also be duplicated over in whatever column we are starting from. And you can either format the table text with the Home tab's formatting or the mini toolbar. So what we're going to do here, let's just do a little bit of shading. If I were to select this cell here with a triple click, that will select the whole cell. The other way to do that, we know, is I single click, come here to the table layout and select the cell. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to go to the table design tab. This is where you can have some preset table styles. Over here, we have individual ways to change things for the cell. So in this case, I'm going to go to cell shading. Now, that color is gray, so I'm going to choose this light gray right here. And when I click out of it, that remains gray. If I triple click here, I can then come up to cell shading for blue and change that to a medium blue. I can come down here, and in fact for this one I'll choose the darker blue. And now my black against blue is a little hard to read, so I'm going to come here and change this text color to white. Okay, I'll do the same here. Triple click, cell shading, darker blue. I'm still selected. I could come to my Home tab and click the white that's already selected. Same thing down here. I'm already selected for the cell shading, and I'm already selected for white text. Okay, that follows along here with brown. I'll choose a dark brown because that's a football. So I will choose this dark brown, and it automatically knew that I was looking to create a dark background, so it switched the text to white. So watch for that. And the same thing with the green. I'll see if it will switch for me if I choose a very dark green. It did. Okay, so I can color code this now. I can also do color and adjustments, style formatting adjustments to the entire table. So let's look at selecting the whole table at this point by choosing the move arrow, which selects the table. Then I'm going to come here to border selection. Now it's got a border on it. I could also set this to no border. Let's take a look at how that looks. The whole table now has no border. Okay, that could be very useful in some places. Notice I could also choose different borders. I could choose a style that is a dashed line border. I could choose a solid line, which is how it started. But what I will do is I will take it a step further and I will adjust the weight. I will bump the weight up. Actually, I will leave the weight as it is for now. I will select the table again and choose an outside border. So, excuse me, I'm going to choose an outside border here. When I do that, I'm now in the mode of adjusting only the outside border because I've selected making changes to the outside border. Now I can come back in here to weight and choose a thicker weight for the outside border. And if I click off the table, you can see that my table has a heavier weight on the outside border. I may even take that up one more notch. Again, border selection, outside border, weight, and I'll take it up 2 clicks to an even thicker. Let's look at sorting. Sorting data in a table. Now, this part that you see down here where it says first, second, and third, that is used in the desktop application, not in Word 365. But you can sort in ascending or descending order. Let's take a look at how you do that. So what columns here might I want to sort? Well, we could start with the first one here, which might be that we want to sort these colors. Now, I don't want to access the word color as well. This is alphabetical sorting. So if I chose color, I would have that in the sort as well. But what I have done is I've single-clicked in this cell and held Shift and come down to the bottom, and I've clicked again, and now I've selected only those 6 rows. So that's important to remember. So I'm going to choose the colors again, just those 6, come back up here to Table Layout, and over here on the right, I've got a data group, which has Sort Table Ascending. That would mean A to Z, A at the top. Descending would be Z at the top. So let's click that. Now notice what's happened. We've had a little bit of a border issue because we've brought the border over from that one row that used to be at the bottom. Notice something else. Everything else moved with it. So I did not sort just the color column. The other columns and their rows went with it. So it's still a bicycle, a blue bicycle in the sports category. It brought the cost and the quantity over. Now to fix this, you may want to do border formatting at the end after you get the table the way you like it. Let me go ahead and just take off the outside border by choosing no border on the outside. Okay, we'll leave that for a moment. So now we can see that we've sorted by color, and basically it's alphabetical. So probably a better candidate for that might be the quantity column. Let's try that. I'm going to single click in the first cell. I'm going to hold Shift and click the last cell. I've only got these 6. Come back to my table layout and sort ascending. Let's do it the other way. Highest quantity to lowest quantity. Let's try that. And so again, it brings the other cells with it. Nothing gets abandoned. We don't get the data mixed up. It keeps the rows intact. Finally, we'll do most expensive, single click in that cell, holding Shift, most expensive to cheapest, descending. And same thing. Then at the end of this, I can choose my whole table, border selection, outside, border selection, weight, and I'll bring the heavy line back into it. I want to show you one last thing here, which is discussing how these rows and cells size. We can manually resize things, as you know, by clicking either the row height adjustment or the column width adjustment. Microsoft Word will also automatically adjust. So let's say, for instance, that I chose all of these. Again, I've selected that first one and I'm holding Shift. I've selected all of these. I'm going to select all of everything down in our normal data rows. And I'm going to come back to the Home tab. Those are at 14. If I decided I wanted to make this table larger overall and I made all of that text down there larger, see what happens with the rows. The rows also become taller. Now the columns in this case did not get wider. So we'll have to consider that maybe this size text might not work for, say, these particular cells. So I might bump those down to 14, and now they're custom smaller. Outdoor Adventure was able to fit. So feel free to certainly change the height. You're going to have the most constraint with width because of the margins of the page, which I could gain a little bit on this page, certainly. But you do want to make sure things fit nicely by the end of your design. And one way to do that is through sizing fonts or adjusting cell widths, heights, column widths as well. Okay, so let's look back at our objectives, make sure we covered everything. We created a table. We selected items in a table different ways. We learned to format the table, borders, shading, fonts. We did not change any fonts, but you can certainly do that. And of course, bold and italic and underline are available. Format tables, apply table styles. We adjusted cell alignment and sizing. We did a cell merge, and then we did some sorting at the end. Hope this was helpful in your design of tables in Microsoft Word 365.